So it's Father's Day. I thought to get the dad feeling going, I'd wear a Hawaiian shirt. It was the hardest time finding a Hawaiian shirt. Anyway, we want to mark Father's Day. I also want to note that June is Pride Month, and so we're honoring fathers in all the diversity. And you might notice pronouns on my name tag. Some people have them. They've got them out at the table here. Mine say he, him, but I'm flexible. Majesty, holiness, whatever you like. And I want to say, we don't just wear those to express our own preference. It's to honor those who have other preferences. It's to acknowledge visibly that we understand people have different ways they'd like to pronounce, and let's get behind that. A Father's Day Prayer by UU Minister Kirk Lodman Copeland. Let us praise those fathers who have striven to balance the demands of work, marriage, and children with an honest awareness of both joy and sacrifice. Let us praise those fathers who, lacking a positive model for fathering, have worked to become good fathers. Let us praise those fathers who, by their own account, were not always there for their children, but who continue to offer those children, now grown, their love and support. Let us pray for those fathers who have been wounded by the neglect and hostility of their children. Let us praise those fathers who, despite divorce, have remained in their children's lives. Let us praise those fathers whose children are adopted and whose love and support has offered healing. Let us praise those fathers who, as stepfathers, freely chose the obligation of fatherhood and have earned their stepchildren's love and respect. Let us praise those fathers who have lost a child to death and continue to hold that child in their heart. Let us praise those men who have no children but cherish the next generation as if they were their own. Let us praise single mothers and non-binary parents who have provided more good fathering than they thought they knew how to give. Let us praise gay men, single and couples, who have given marvelous fathering in spite of cultural prejudice against them. Let us praise those men who have fathered us in their role as mentors, teachers, and guides. Let us praise those men who are about to become fathers. May they openly delight in their children. And let us praise those fathers who have died, but live on in our memory, and whose love continues to nurture us. It's time for our meditation. Please get comfortable in the chair and be aware that you're on the earth, energy coming up through the floor, into your body, into your breath. Our topic, Fathering of All Kinds, gives me a chance to read one of my favorite poems about mentors and other figures that have provided fathering for us. Gratitude to Old Teachers by Robert Bly. When we stride or stroll across the frozen lake, we place our feet where they have never been. We walk upon the unwalked, but we are uneasy. Who is down there but our old teachers? Water that once could take no human weight, we were students then, holds up our feet and goes on ahead of us for a mile. Beneath us, the teachers, and around us, the stillness. Fathering is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about showing up again and again with compassion, vulnerability, and a sense of shared responsibility. Father's Day invites us to ask, how do we take on the sacred role of guiding and protecting? How do we nurture others? How do we nurture ourselves? How do we contribute to creating a world where everyone feels seen, safe, and supported? A guy I knew was worried his son was spending too much time playing computer games. He told his son, "At your age, Abraham Lincoln was studying books by the light of the fireplace." The boy snaps back, "When Lincoln was your age, he was president of the United States." A friend of mine was washing his car with his son. The kid had the nerve to ask, "Dad, can't you just use a sponge?" That one's on a timer. In June, a feeling sometimes nags me that there's some errand I'm forgetting. Then it comes to me. I need to get a card for Father's Day. Then again, my daddy passed away 30 years ago, so that's one item I can cross off my mental to-do list. I think the tug comes from something unresolved in the relationship. My earliest memory is 2 years old. My father is carrying me on his chest. He would sit on his arm and up on his chest and look over. I can look back over his shoulder. I can date the memory that early in life because we were on a specific vacation. The family is taking a cruise from Seattle up to Alaska, following the Inland Passage. I remember looking over Daddy's shoulder at what seemed like an enormous ship. There's some kind of scaffolding, like there's repair work going on. I love being held like this. Daddy is a big, confident man. I feel safe when he is holding me against his chest. Years later, I asked my sisters about the scaffolding on that ship. They remember the trip. It was on the Princess Louise, built in 1921, shuttled passengers along the northwest coast for decades. My sisters don't remember any construction. They say there was no scaffolding. Memory can be funny, a little detailed like that. They can't place any work being done on the ship. My early maritime recollection stands out because it's so far back, but I felt so safe with my father. That was not always the case. He was quite driven in his work, and the pressure came home with him. He could be stern. On Sundays, he would teach the 7th grade Sunday school class at the big church we went to. His students revered him. They got the good part. I ran into, in the Clergy Association, I met a fellow who was a chaplain over at Cottage Hospital, and we kind of compared notes on our spiritual journey and we ended up, we'd gone to the same big church down in Hollywood as kids, and he said, "Young, you're not Lawrence Young's son, are you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "He was my best Sunday school teacher." Well, that's weird. I figured out early on that it relaxed my father to talk about his youthful adventures. I got very good at getting him to reminisce. You might say I used pop psychology. There were stories about his childhood, about almost dying of the influenza during the 1918 pandemic, how his father was quite an unreliable provider, getting through the Depression, how hard that was. These scary stories were always told with bravado, as if the fear had never gotten the better of him. On Father's Day, as an adult, I would send a card. It was hard to find the right one, given how complicated our relationship had become. Hallmark doesn't make one that says, "I'd love to be close to you, but I've never figured out how." For me, a relationship with a parent is forever. Father's Day may be the closest our culture comes to a ritual of revering ancestors. Mother's Day, Father's Day. I am the descendant of a long line of strong-willed characters. Daddy is the one I knew. I'd like to think they are all here with me as I tell my Father's Day story. To quote Steve Martin, fathers are people with pictures of their children in their wallets. They keep it where their money used to be. Exactly when do people start telling dad jokes? When they become a parent. Oh, okay, it's clearly time for me to step aside and let Anne tell her father's stories.
Sorry, I don't think I have any dad jokes. We'll see. Enough luck and love. It was lucky that Daddy joined the Navy instead of the Army, like his best friend, Donald, who never came back. He was inspired to join up when Donald enlisted, but he chose the Navy because in the Navy, he said, you had your kitchen with you. It was lucky that in the war, Daddy's ships were not hit by torpedoes. It was lucky that he was stationed in New York and that Mommy went with Graham to a USO dance where Graham was a chaperone. Mommy met Daddy on the dance floor. And very lucky that after the war, he and Mommy stood up to Graham's disapproval and eloped to California. Daddy's singing is what held me. Even before I remember, he would hold me and sing to me. I remember him driving, singing along with the radio, 16 tons, what do you get, another day older and deeper in debt. Aunt Shirley tells me he favored me. I favored him too. While he worked in the yard, planting strawberries, blackberries, and fruit trees, while he burned trash in a big metal barrel in the yard, while he mowed the front lawn and built a small fence to keep Donald from crawling into the street, while he built a playhouse for us, while he built wooden toy boxes, while he sawed wood in the driveway laid across 2 sawhorses, while he raked leaves on Saturday, I was his shadow, asking questions he always answered. When I was 4, he gave me a little blue willow china tea set. I would set it up on a small card table in the front walk next to the border of marigolds and have tea parties with invisible friends. When he killed the turkey on Thanksgiving, he told us to stay in the house so we wouldn't see. But then there were magical, iridescent feathers to play with for months afterwards. When we had to move from that little house, he put the playhouse on a trailer and towed it behind the car. I'm grateful for my daddy's love. I'm grateful for the unreserved quality of the romantic songs he sang, the way he loved my mother and his mother, despite their poverty and his father's illness. He also loved the hills above Oakland and playing the harmonica. He loved the girls in high school and Betty Grable when he was in the Navy. He loved the lady Navy recruiter who signed him up when he was 17, and she laughed when he asked her to marry him. He loved his best friend Donald. He named my little brother Donald for his friend. He never talked about his experiences in the war. He loved to sing in the piano bar called the Lucky Star. It wasn't enough luck for him to get a big break, and too much alcohol couldn't fix anything when Mommy got sick. I didn't see him after I was 7. He died when I was 8. When I was 10, I was reunited with my grandma, his mother. She brought out the little green striped cardboard box from China. I opened the lid, and there was my tea set, something my daddy had saved and treasured for me, proof that all the good that had come before was real. I'm grateful that I got more than my share of his love, though he loved my siblings unreservedly also. He loved the berries he planted in the yard and the house he built for us. He loved the toy boxes he built for us, the pink paint he put on the walls of our bedroom. Though I'm not sure he loved as much the pink walls that Mommy later painted in the living room and the dining room. I am grateful for the large measures of love he packed into the first 7 years of my life, enough to shield me from being lost in bitterness and turning away from the world when he was no longer there, enough to find my way back to his love many years later, enough to allow me to keep my heart open to love and be loved.
Let us honor diversity on this day. Fathers come in all forms and types. I read a story in the Sun magazine about a little girl who was all excited about getting to see her daddy. She had prepared a little song for him. He was serving a long sentence in prison. When her mother got the two of them into the little visitor's cubicle, the girl took the phone, there's a phone so that you can hear through the thick glass, held it like a microphone and sang, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." The father put his hand up against the glass, and the girl put hers up. That was as close as they were going to get to touching. Tears flowed down the father's face, a face covered in scary tattoos. To the girl, he was not some dangerous gangster from the hood. He was Daddy. Please don't take my sunshine away. When I was in my 30s, I heard what became of that ocean cruise steamer, the one I had traveled to Alaska on at age 2. The Princess Louise had become a floating restaurant in Los Angeles Harbor. I went down one day and walked through the ship. It was much smaller than I remembered. It wasn't some big ocean liner, which is what I had pictured. It was more of an inter-island ferry. My father was a tall guy. The deck had a low canopy. It rains a lot in the Northwest, so all the open areas were covered. It was a little industrial looking, a bit like scaffolding. My father was a fervent born-again Christian. He always claimed he was looking forward to going to heaven when he died. My own spiritual views evolved over the years. By my 30s, I no longer believed in an afterlife. Early one morning, I had a vivid dream. The ceiling in my daddy's bedroom opened up, and he ascended through a big hole, like one of the saints or something. Then my phone was ringing. I picked it up in a groggy state. It was one of my sisters, who never called at such an hour. I'm not an early riser. It was well before 6 a.m. She was calling to tell me Daddy had died. He had been in a coma for over a year. It started to feel like he was going to be in suspended animation forever. So I had expected a call would come any day. It was sad, but not a surprise that he was gone. It did seem weird to have just had that dream. I thanked my sister for the call, then rolled over and went back to sleep. Within moments, another intense dream started. In it, my father came to see me. I said, "Didn't you already die?" He said, "Yes, but I wanted to come back to say goodbye to you." I thanked him, and then asked, "So, have you already been in heaven?" "Yes," he said, "and I'm going back, but I wanted to see you before leaving for good." "So," I said, "have you seen God?" I purposely shifted into his way of saying things. "Have you been with the Lord?" He nodded with this big smile. "I have to ask," I said, "is it like you expected?" "Oh no. Oh no, it's so much better than anything I ever imagined. There are no words to tell you." And with that, he left. Now, I'm not sure if ghosts visit dreams. I don't know what to make of my daddy going to heaven. It was my dream. The encounter did not change my views on such matters. I have read a great deal of the psychology of religion, that the relationship with Father and the ideas of God get all mingled. And the language in spiritual writings about, God the Father and all of that, well, our feelings about Father are pretty intense, and our longing for a protective Father and all get projected on the heavens and what have you. So I know all that's in here somewhere. Anyway, my father was a big presence. Every Father's Day, I do find myself reflecting on the many mixed feelings I have about him. I heard a line in a play once: "Death ends a life, but it does not end a relationship." Action steps. The first is, consider your inner child. I've thought about this a lot. I have an inner child. I don't think it's mine, but there's an inner child. That is to reflect on your... Sue liked that one. Okay, I got Sue. Do your journaling, your spiritual practices. This is an ongoing project. Related to fathering, practice active listening. There are different models around. One was nonviolent communication. There's a parent effectiveness. There are a number of different models. You can Google and find this, but this is mostly just listening well, making space, not jumping in, particularly if you're talking to a young person. We always think we've got something to say to the young people. I think listening is probably more valuable, and maybe a little sound or two to encourage or affirm or something like that. Model emotional intelligence. This is strength with vulnerability, the ability to talk about our feelings, to encourage others to do the same. It's not any feeling, it's mostly sadness and fear. It's the vulnerable feelings that people need encouragement and support for. See if we can celebrate non-traditional families. This is advocating the inclusive language, the policies that honor all forms of family and parenting. And if you have a chance, mentor somebody. I don't mean to take on some long project, but when in passing, when somebody needs support, or you see somebody, particularly if they're younger and they're doing something, come by and say, "You're doing a nice job there." Any chance we get, and any chance we get to support organizations that help single parents foster children or families experiencing hardship. In closing, I'd like to read a piece by Irma Bombeck. It's called, "I Remember Papa." When I was a kid, a father was like the light in the refrigerator. Every house had one, but nobody knew what either of them did once the door was shut. My dad left house every morning and always seemed glad to see everyone at night. He opened the jar of pickles when no one else could. He was the only one in the house who wasn't afraid to go into the basement by himself. If he cut himself shaving, no one kissed it or got excited. It was understood whenever it rained, he got the car and brought it around to the door. When anyone was sick, he got the prescriptions filled. He set mouse traps, cut back the roses so the thorns wouldn't clip you if you came through the front door. When I got a bike, he ran alongside me for at least 1,000 miles till I got the hang of it. I was afraid of everybody else's father, but not my own. Once I made him tea. It was only sugar water, but he sat on a tiny chair and said it was delicious. Whenever I played house, the mother doll had a lot to do. I never knew what to do with the daddy doll, so I had him say, "I'm going off to work now," then threw him under the bed. When I was 9 years old, my father didn't get up one morning and go to work. He went to the hospital and died the next day. I went to my room and felt under my bed for the daddy doll. When I found him, I dusted him off and put him on the bed. He never did anything. I didn't know his leaving would hurt so much. I still don't know why. Namaste. Blessed be. And so it goes.